Stephen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Very well, my friend. Thank you. I'm very well
Good
indeed.
stuff. Good
Um,
stuff.
Stephen, thank you very much for joining me. Um, as with all my guests, I don't want to do you the injustice of introducing you in the correct manner or selling you short. So I'm going to give you the floor and allow you to introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Matt. Hello, I'm Steve Prescott-Jones, and I'm the Director of Digital Technology at Imperial College London. I've been here since late November 2020. So I joined partway through the pandemic. So that
Yeah.
made it very interesting because it was
Hmm.
8 months before I actually met any of my teams or my colleagues. So I was very reliant on technology and remote working and all that kind of thing
Yeah.
to in the first 7 or 8 months here.
So I I know Imperial College London, right? And probably a lot of people will recognize that name and that organization.
Yeah,
But it kind of throws you off when you hear the word college.
it does
So,
indeed. Yeah.
um, can I allow you to explain exactly what the institution is?
Indeed, indeed. So Imperial College is, as you suggested, it is a university. It's a Russell Group university, so one of the top universities in the UK. I think currently ranked third in the UK and 10 in the world. We're a research and academic institution, very focused on technology, medicine, and obviously science. And we're obviously well known for a long time and right in the heart of South Kensington, near the museums and in that area.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where our history is entrenched in that desire to have that cultural centre in that part of London.
And in terms of like number of employees, number of students, campus locations, what kind of sizing are we talking?
So in terms of students, I think we're on about 16, average usually around 16,000, around 8,000 employees. Our main campus is in South Kensington, but we've
Mhm.
also got campuses in White City, and we've also got affiliations with various NHS trusts. So we've got campuses that are linked to that side of things as well.
Okay. Okay, wicked. So we're of course here to talk about infrastructure and technology.
Yeah,
So what I would like to do is ask, over the last couple of years, since you joined in the middle of a pandemic,
yeah.
what has been going on from a technology perspective at Imperial College?
I suppose, well, a lot has been going on.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of transformation, but for me, there's been a number of key issues that we had to address. So, technical debt. We had a lot of old technologies that we had to address that for on-premise systems that were going to remain for some time. So we replaced our aging server estate with hyper-converged infrastructure, our legacy backup solution with a more modular data protection solution. We've um, we've moved away from sort of things like legacy telephony solutions to integrated solutions with Teams. We had some legacy desktop operating systems in there that we've been getting rid of. We've been trying to move people away from um, desktops to laptops and desk phones to using integrated telephony on their laptops and facilitate more flexible hybrid working, but also improve the overall user experience. And by user experience, I mean both students and staff, and researchers and academics who, at the end of the day, are the core of what we do at Imperial. Me
Mm.
and my teams, our only reason to be here is to support research and academia. So yeah, and obviously joining during the pandemic was remote working, and a lot of people were remote working. And what we found at that point in time was that we had varying solutions in place for remote access. So we had multiple VPNs, we had people using remote desktop, we had lots of different solutions giving a different look and feel to how you access things. And the expectation was that people, irrespective of whether they worked in technology, HR, finance, or or if they were in the student union, didn't matter where they were expected to understand which of the different routes they should take for various different applications. So it was it wasn't very intuitive, it wasn't user friendly, and it wasn't a consistent user experience. So one of the key ways we looked to address that was by putting in a zero trust solution, which we started very much with a view as to how we wanted to do this, and we looked to a solution to supplement that. And by that I mean we purchased an off-the-shelf solution, Zscaler ZPA, but at the same time we did a lot of work internally to create what we called user personas. So actually, when we implemented that solution, we could align staff and researchers and academics to specific job roles, which means in the background it would automatically enumerate what they needed access to. So from a user perspective, you click on the agent, you log in. It doesn't matter if you're in the office, in a cafe, in a hotel, at a conference in Zurich, wherever you are, you get access to exactly the same things in exactly the same consistent manner. And that has been huge from the college's perspective, to go from a world where you're expecting people to say, for application A, I use this VPN. For application B, it's a remote desktop. Application C, it's a different, more secure VPN, to I've got one icon, and wherever I am, I click on it and it does everything for me in the background, has been absolutely transformational. And pretty much every session we have with the wider college, somebody will mention how much it has improved their overall experience and their productivity, because it's quick. It happens within seconds. Within a minute, you are connected in with the access you need without having to think about it. So that's been a huge benefit to us as an organization.
Right. Well, great to hear. And not that I'm biased or anything, being an employee of Zscaler. We're going to come back to ZPA in a moment. I will pick up on that topic, but there was a lot of other things that you mentioned. For example, like removing legacy tech debt, new backup systems, etc. So, and I think there was like 5 or 6 different technologies that you've implemented. So that's a lot of stuff, right? And a very, what I would say, traditional digital transformation, upgrading legacy systems. What really was going on at the university, or what's driving that need to upgrade? Is it like with the ZPA piece, is it poor user experience? Is it complexity? Is it high costs? Is it security? What is actually driving that digital transformation at Imperial College?
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of everything you mentioned. So initially, if you take the hyper-converged infrastructure and the backup solutions in place, so we had legacy systems that were taking up a lot of data center space, using a lot of power, weren't giving the best service, and certainly weren't the best best way to utilize our data center footprints. We use a data center in Slough from a provider, but we also have on premise as well at South Kensington, our own data center as well. So we want to, Imperial as a college is aiming for net zero by 2040. So one of the big that's a big driver in a lot of things that we do. So we're looking to remove that carbon footprint, or reduce it as much as we possibly can. So that was a key driver. The security side as well, putting more secure systems in place, and improving the service side of it, and the resilience of it, and the complexity with hyper-converged infrastructure. You're in effect getting everything you need from a compute, a networking, and a storage perspective bundled together, rather than having separate components in place. So from a support perspective, it's improved things massively as well. And it's allowed us to hugely consolidate the number of racks we've got in our supplier data centers and on premise. And it gives us more flexibility in the way that we do things. And the fact that it's modular means that now, because obviously one of our biggest on-premise footprints is research. So, researchers apply for research grants. Traditionally, they would put X amount of in there, 8,000, 10,000, whatever, to buy their own server, to get it wrapped, to wrap their arms around it and say, this is my server. I can point to whoever's given me the research grant, whatever funding body it may be, and say, look, you paid for this thing here. And we're trying to move them away from that. We're trying to get them to consume shared platforms, to consume what we've got available, not just on premise. We can touch on the cloud side of it in a little while as well. But we're trying to get standard offerings in place. And my background prior to HE, I've worked in-house at large central government organizations, but I've also worked for solution integrators such as Fujitsu and HP and organizations like that, where you're very focused on creating an offering that people want to come and consume shared, whereas in Imperial, it is quite siloed, and we can touch on that a little bit later because it probably aligns to a slightly different topic. But so it was about creating environments that could be easily consumed, that were flexible, that could flex up. Some elements of research only happen 4 or 5 times a year. So if you buy a physical on-premise server for that, then 80% of the year it's sat there consuming power and not being used. So a hyperconverged infrastructure platform using the latest virtualization technologies means that actually you can switch off those virtual machines, you can take backups of them, and you're not utilizing anything there, and you're getting better use of your platform. A lot of infrastructures that's standalone, that's bought for research, isn't fully utilized, but it's taking up space and power. So that's been a big driver as well. And again, that feeds into the sustainability angle side of things as well.
Okay, so like a lot of stuff going on, mate, and must be like really interesting and rewarding to have all of these ongoing projects where you've got this legacy jumbled like systems, and then you've pulled everything through to this new architectural state. But yeah, let me just ask a few more questions about ZPA. So for anyone who doesn't know, ZPA, of course, is it can be used as a remote access tool, and it's a replacement for VPN. But more generally, it's just a way for organizations to securely access any private applications that they have. So whether that's an ERP system which is running in AWS or Azure or GCP, or if it's something which is hosted on premise, as long as it's like a privately, internally managed application, ZPA will facilitate a secure zero trust connection to it. And I know that you have already given some background as to why you went with ZPA and the whole reason for changing, but can you just talk a little bit more about the user groups that you mentioned? And I'm going to read in between the lines and say you probably did that by creating user groups in like Azure AD or another type of Active Directory.
Yeah, that's correct. We use Azure AD, and we for each of the personas we created various groups in there, and those groups are linked up to conditional access within Azure AD as well. So the next step for us will be sort of verifying the status of a device, and if it doesn't meet the minimum requirements, then even if somebody's user role gives them access to certain applications, we will block the access until they apply the updates, upgrade the OS, or do whatever it may be. So we're very much focused on the security side of it as well as the user experience side of things. And you make a really good point. As I said earlier, it's seamless and consistent access to all our applications, not just on premise, where wherever they may be. At the moment, things like our ERP system and that kind of thing are on premise, but moving forward, we will be moving to SaaS solutions. But clearly, systems that hold student data, staff data, sensitive data like that need to be secured, irrespective of where they're hosted, and we need to control access to them.
Okay. And from the security perspective, so previously you had people who were like just using an always on VPN, or maybe some VPN that they could bypass. They had multiple different VPNs, and probably people had access to stuff that they maybe you didn't want them having access to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can you just explain with ZPA what has been the security benefit from that perspective? So how has that access changed versus what it was before?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point you make, because I think that you do get little pockets of resistance with all these type of things, and there was certain people in research and maybe academic communities that were used to being able to have a little bit of a tinker, a little bit of play around,
Yeah.
and do things. And there's two sides to that. It created potential security risks because it meant there was things happening we weren't aware of, but it also created issues because of people had that ability to, using an open VPN, maybe change things and do things differently, and then would raise incidents or cause issues and come to us and say, "Oh, this doesn't work anymore." And it goes back to that consistency piece, because we had a lack of consistency and maybe a little bit of a lack of control because there was things that were using open VPNs, and over the years, lots of different pockets of the organization had developed slightly different VPN solutions and slightly different ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of alludes to the fragmentation that you tend to see more in higher education because of the way it's set up and the way it's funded. It's not like a standard organization where you have a central pot. We've got money coming in from tuition fees, which is probably, our biggest income stream, probably 55 to 60%. But then you've got research grants coming from funding bodies in the UK, but also then from philanthropists and all sorts of different areas. So you've got so many different streams coming in and so many different people working on slightly different things, or that having that consistent means of access has probably been a little bit harder in the past. Okay. So what this gave us was we were able to demonstrate to all these different user groups that we could give them a consistent, seamless solution that made their lives easier, and that it wasn't going to be to their detriment, while, as you say, at the same time, from our perspective, being able to make it more secure, more controlled, and us have more visibility and control of what people are doing and what they're accessing and why they're accessing it.
Okay. You should probably get a job at Zscaler. You're pretty good at articulating it. No, but in all serious, we're done. I'm done blowing my own trumpet and Zscaler's trumpet. But it's always great to hear an authentic, review of the technology.
I would just add one thing on that before we move on to other areas, because I just found it quite interesting. And again, it goes back to the HE mindset. So we both know that that the product ZPA and the technologies used across the industry are known as zero trust. Mm-hmm. When we first went to our various committees and forums in the college, as you do with anything new you're introducing to the college, and we started to present on it and articulate our plans for replacing VPN. The main concern that we got from some of the senior stakeholders was the name Zero Trust. They said it had too many negative connotations. Okay. So actually internally, we brand it as unified access to put a more positive spin on it. And it's just I just found it intriguing that was people's main concern, just the connotations from that. But I just thought it was an interesting little anecdote.
If the Zscaler marketing team are watching, maybe we can consider a rebrand for HE.
Indeed.
Yeah. But no, let's just stick on the HE piece for a little bit then. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about or maybe observe coming from system integrators and other backgrounds moving into HE from a technology perspective?
Yeah, I think that there are a number of challenges in HE. I think, we've talked about what Imperial College is and the scale of it and obviously where it ranks across the world and that kind of thing. But that still doesn't detract from the fact that it's a higher education institution. So we're not we're a public organization at the end of the day. We're not a large corporate organization. So in terms of the budget I've got to do things here, it's nowhere near, for example, my previous role, I headed up hybrid cloud at DWP, and my budget there was at least probably almost 10 times there just for the cloud and on-premise elements as it is for what in comparison is a wider scope. So I have a wider scope in my role here, but a far smaller budget. And that's just the way of the world, you accept that. So that impacts. So when we're looking at the things we are doing, we do have to pick and choose. So when I joined, I one of the first things I had to do in my mind was have a 3-year plan and say, right, what are the main things that we need to tackle? What's going to give the main benefit to the college? And that, so we're into, sort of 2.5 years, just under 2.5 years I've been here, and there's a lot of good things we've achieved, but there's more we've got to do around identity and access management, around upgrading our wireless and connectivity solutions, and sort of driving forward on digital / smart campus side of things as well. So things like that are different as well. Smart campus is very much focused on what we are as an organization. It's not something I've really looked at in previous roles. I touched on the budget streams and the way money comes in. That adds a level of politics into the organization that I've not seen elsewhere, because obviously researchers have got very much got their own budget, academics have got their responsibility around teaching and that side of things. So within my area, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that the things we do impact the things they are here to do. Whereas at DWP previously, and when I was working at Fujitsu or HP, and we were delivering into a customer, we very much had a mandate to do those things and could just progress and do them. Whereas here we need to think about, well, if we make these changes and there's a potential it's going to cause a problem to an academic in the middle of a lecture, or even worse, in the middle of an exam, then so it isn't straightforward. As we can't just make technology choices and mandate them. We need to think about the impact of them and ensure that they are actually improving, the student experience, improving the academics and the researchers' experience and the things that they're here to do.
So love those insights, right? Love all of this, and super interesting to hear about the dynamics of HE. Just a final question on this topic is, for anyone who is of the head of IT, head of transformation, head of technology-esque roles, what would you say is probably the biggest challenge that they're facing? Or you can even talk to this from your perspective. Not so, maybe it is the budgets, or maybe it is the stakeholder management piece that you said, but in general, what would you say in this day and age is your biggest challenge related to your role?
I think the speed with which technology moves is really difficult in any role, to be honest with you. And the bigger the organization, the more problematic that is. And that's not specific to HE at all. I've seen that in previous roles at previous organizations. If you're doing a large scale transformation, and you're looking at it, even if you're doing it in a more agile way with sprints and sort of DevOps teams doing things, you're still going to find that anything that takes more than a few months elapsed time, the technology is going to change. And it's great that technology is changing and improving so quickly all the time. It's a huge benefit, but it does force you to look at things in more incremental steps, rather than, up until probably 4 or 5 years ago, any big infrastructure project was just waterfall, just by virtue of the fact that if you're installing a load of things into a rack, you haven't really got an MVP till it's all up and running and signed off. You can't have a stage where, oh, go on, then you can sort of use it, but it's not really finished yet, So it didn't really lend itself to agile, but I think more and more now, and obviously with cloud and the way things have been built, it does allow for that more agile way of working, which you need, because you can't say, right, we've got a 9-month plan to implement this. The technology's here on day one. It's not going to be in the same place in month 2, never mind month 9. There's going to have been iterations, there's going to have been releases, there's going to have been functionality changes. So keeping up with all of that, I think, is kind of going to be a constant battle, and technology evolves more quickly. And I think what the pandemic demonstrated to me, because I was still at DWP at the start of the pandemic, and one of the problems we had there in such a large central government organization wasn't really with technology as such, because actually we'd just brought everything in house and we were very ahead of the curve. You know, we'd built up universal credit as a cloud first application in AWS. We had a big Azure footprint. We had full CI/CD pipelines in place for all our benefit systems. You know, we were very ahead of the curve. But the one thing we struggled with was approval for change and expansion on certain things like VPN. So we've been trying for ages to expand our VPN. The pandemic hit, and suddenly we expanded it from 15,000 concurrent users to 100,000 concurrent users in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
Because you know, we had no choice. We had to do this so people could carry on working. You know, applications that had been in supplier data centers that we've been told would take another 6 or 9 months to migrate. We couldn't handle that cost during the pandemic anymore. So we just got a few of our own people in there under the covers and literally virtualized them and moved them over in a weekend after the supplier told us, oh, it's going to take you 9 months to do this. So I think it's a cliche, but necessity is the mother of invention. And I think technology moves fast, and a lot of organizations have not had the processes that match the agile way of working to enable that change to be delivered, to keep a pace with that. But the pandemic, I think, has changed that, because people have realized we had a lot of yes, you need change processes in place and you need to ensure things are secure. But I think a lot of organizations have realized that maybe they were slowing down their ability to transform with over elaborate processes, shall we say?
Burdensome, yeah. Okay, so I like that, and I like particularly the piece about the rapid change of technology, because it eloquently leads me into our final question, for which we've got about 5 or so minutes to talk about.
Okay.
So vendors are constantly innovating, and there's new ones coming to market, and the existing ones are bringing new technologies to market. So on one hand, you have these vendors and these sellers who are trying to sell you this new amazing technology. And then on the other hand, you have people like yourself who are working within, you know, organizations, within IT teams, who have a mandate to make sure you bring that technology on where it's suitable. And that sales process and that buy-in process, I feel, can sometimes be frictious and you know, maybe not as seamless and as how you would like it to run. So can you just talk about, you know, perhaps tactics or strategies, processes that vendors have, which kind of turns you off, and you know, how you may like that relationship, that engagement to look a little differently in the future?
Yeah, I think to me there's a number of key areas. So and this is very specific to Imperial now, and I've not experienced it as much elsewhere. So Imperial makes our information very public. So I get a lot of emails into my inbox from people, and I think the thing that that I wouldn't say annoys me, because that's probably too stronger word, but the thing that I suppose doesn't help is if people sort of they bombard you with emails. 2, they've not really taken the time to understand your landscape. So they just hit you with, you know, oh, we've got this solution, we've got that. And I suppose 3, when a vendor or a supplier sort of comes in with, we know best on all of these things, so we can do this for you, rather than, to me, it's very much about a collaborative approach. You know, when I'm speaking to a vendor, I want us to deliver something jointly, which we've done very much with Zscaler. We're doing with other technologies as well. We jointly work to deliver something that's beneficial to us, an organization, and obviously to the supplier as well. So the key for me is understanding the organization that the vendor's contacting and what their needs are. Sort of keeping track of conversations as well. Sometimes a supplier will get in touch and say, oh, we're interested in discussing this with you. And you can go back to them and say, that's great, but we just implemented that technology that does this. So we're not looking to change for the next 2 to 3 years or whatever, and then 6 weeks later, that same person contacts you again about the same thing, and it's like, well, if it was me when I worked on the SI side of things, I'd bank it, and you'd keep it as something to pursue in 2.5 years when this is next going to be looked at. So yeah, and obviously I've worked on the supplier side as well, so I understand it's difficult, and everybody's everybody's got a different job to do. But for me, that kind of personal touch, understanding the organization, understanding what the needs are, and that willingness to say from the start that what you want to do is work jointly to deliver something, rather than, in effect, we want to sell you a technology and then leave you to it and move on to the next sale, if you like.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to paraphrase, because that's quite similar to what a lot of people in your position tell me, is like the generic marketing-esque emails, which maybe present a technology but don't necessarily give much credence to actually what's going on at the organization they're trying to sell to.
Yeah.
They get left by the wayside. When you're a seller and you're a vendor or an organization, and you can synthesize a hypothesis and show that you're well read and that you have researched, and you actually have conceptualized what's going on at the person you're trying to sell to's world, then that hits a chord with Steve, because it shows that someone has actually done their research, has taken the time to understand where you're at before reaching out.
Yeah, exactly. And that does make a huge difference. If you think somebody's put that bit of effort in, and they want to take that sort of extra step rather than firing the standard marketing email at you, then it makes you think, well, if they're willing to do that at this stage, then obviously that moving forward, you would expect a better experience and more of a collaborative effort moving forward.
And would you be able to quantify how many like LinkedIn requests, emails, phone calls you're getting maybe on a daily and a weekly basis?
Oh my God, I probably get up to a dozen LinkedIn emails and invites from people trying to sell me things. In terms of emails to my Imperial account, probably similar. Probably between 5 and 10 a day of people trying to sell me things. In terms of phone calls, if I don't recognize a number, I just don't answer it. So if I look at my recent calls, then today I've had 4 from numbers that I don't recognize on my business line.
Yeah.
So I suspect they were all people trying to sell me something. So we get quite a lot. And like I say, our information at Imperial is public, so that probably makes it easier for people to get hold of us, firstly, and secondly, because of who we are, people want to work with us. But the best way to work with us really is as I've said, to understand what our needs are and understand how you can work jointly with us to deliver value to us as an organization.
Right. Well, there's some great insights and some great advice to any sellers who may be listening to this. I'm going to wrap up by saying thank you, Stephen. That was super, super enjoyable. Great bit of free marketing for Zscaler, which I'm sure they'll be pleased about. And I just want to hand over the floor to you in case there's any perhaps roles or anything that you're trying to achieve or that you need help with at Imperial right now, where someone can get in contact with you if you need them to.
I think at the moment, the main things that we're doing are the main big things will be the digital campus side of things. So we've formulated a high level strategy on that. And then other things really are mainly underway in terms of our IAM replacement and that side of things. So yeah. And obviously the first step in the digital / smart campus side of things is our connectivity piece. So we're going out to tender on that fairly soon as well. So they're the big ones for the coming academic year. So we work in academic years, not financial years. So yeah, we're still in academic year 22-23. So we start 23-24 in August.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, on that note, what we will do is we will say goodbye. And Steve, I'm going to thank you very much for coming on, joining me as a guest. Was a pleasure to speak to you, and I thank you for your insights.
No problem. It was great to speak to you too.
Cheers, Steve.
Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.